The night in California was colder than usual. On the top floor of a glass tower, the lights were still on. A man stood by the window, watching the stream of cars below, glowing like fading streaks of light. His name was Evan Lewis, 35 years old, CEO of the tech conglomerate Innovex, once hailed as the genius of Silicon Valley. But tonight, no one called him a genius anymore. Only a man standing silently in a vast room, holding a half-finished glass of wine and eyes hollow with emptiness. On the table lay a photo that had slipped out of his leather wallet, a picture of him with a woman who once smiled so brightly. A woman who had left him just because he refused to send her another $1 million to prove his love. From that day on, Evan learned one thing. People could love everything about him, except who he truly was. He took off his Rolex, placed it on the table, and glanced around his lavish apartment with a faint smile. Beautiful, but so cold. Then he picked up his phone. A message from his assistant flashed on the screen. "Sir, you have a board meeting tomorrow regarding the acquisition deal." Evan replied with a single line, "Cancel everything. I need to disappear for a while." The next morning, the city awoke, unaware that Chairman Lewis had left his $20 million penthouse behind. He put on an old shirt, a pair of jeans, carried a worn backpack, and drove a rusty car rented from a small garage. No bodyguards, no chauffeur, just a man who wanted to live as himself. He stopped in a working-class neighborhood near one of Innovex's tech plants. There he signed a contract as a regular engineer under a new name, Evan Cole. No one recognized that he was the man behind the shining Innovex Corporation sign. No one knew that this quiet, modest man once commanded thousands of employees. The early days were simple. A small office filled with the hum of printers, the smell of coffee mixed with machine oil. And it was there that he met Mia Carter, the 28-year-old receptionist who always greeted him with a bright smile. "Morning, Mr. Cole. You're earlier than the coffee machine again," she teased. Evan chuckled, his gaze soft like the first sunlight of spring. "I just don't want to be late, like a normal person would." She laughed, and that laughter made his heart skip a beat. Day by day, they met in the lobby, shared lunch boxes that Mia cooked herself. She discussed her dream of owning a small house. He, the man who once owned villas and yachts, just listened quietly. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace. No meetings, no fake handshakes, just the warmth of home-cooked rice, a gentle laugh, and the comfort of seeing honesty reflected in someone's eyes. One afternoon, as the sunlight faded behind the buildings, Mia asked softly, "Mr. Cole, you never talk about your family. Do you live alone?" He was silent for a moment, then murmured, "Yeah, I've gotten used to being alone. In a world where everyone's too busy to be real." She looked at him, said nothing, just nodded quietly. In that instant, Evan realized he was no longer pretending to be poor. He was finally living, for the first time in his life. Yet deep inside, a quiet fear remained. He wondered, if she ever found out who I really am, would she still smile at me the same way? His eyes drifted to the old gold ring on his hand, a keepsake from his father, who once told him, "If you want to know who truly loves you, step out of the light." And Evan had stepped out of that light, unaware that in this very darkness, a storm was already on its way. 3 months after meeting Mia, Evan had quietly become an inseparable part of her life. Every morning they shared coffee in the lobby. Every evening she walked him to the bus stop. Even though he always said, "You don't have to." To Mia, he was a kind, humble man with eyes that truly listened. To Evan, she was the warmth he once believed he'd never feel again. One drizzly afternoon, Mia spoke shyly, her cheeks faintly pink. "This weekend, would you come to my house? My mom wants to meet you." Evan froze. For the first time in years, his heart raced. Not from love, but fear. Not fear of her mother, but of the truth. He managed a soft smile. "Of course. I'll come, but I don't really have much to bring." "You coming is enough," Mia replied, her smile gentle as sunlight after rain. Saturday evening, Evan arrived at Mia's home, a small suburban house with pink bougainvillea vines climbing the porch railings. He carried a basket of fruit and a modest bouquet. Simple gifts, but chosen with care. The door opened. Mia's mother appeared. A woman in her 50s, sharp eyes scanning him from head to toe. Her gaze paused on his slightly wrinkled shirt and worn shoes. "So, you're an engineer?" she asked, her tone dry as desert wind. "Yes, ma'am. I work at Innovex." "Innovex? That's a big company. But I suppose engineers don't make much, do they?" Evan smiled politely. "I make enough to get by." Her eyebrow arched, her lips curled in subtle disdain. "Enough to get by? My daughter is beautiful, and she's supposed to settle for enough to get by?" Mia flinched, clutching Evan's hand as she whispered, "Mom, please. He's a good man." Dinner that night was heavy with silence. Her mother kept asking about his salary, his car, and his home. Evan answered honestly that he rented a small apartment, drove an old car, and owned little of value. She chuckled coldly, turning toward Mia. "The girl next door just got a new condo from her boyfriend, and you bring home a man who doesn't even iron his shirt." Mia lowered her head, eyes glistening with tears. Evan stayed quiet. He wasn't angry, only hurt. Hurt because he knew he could light up this house with a single signature, but chose silence to protect something far more fragile, her trust. After dinner, he offered to wash the dishes, a simple act of humility, but to Mia's mother, proof of low status. "No need. We don't make men wash dishes here," she said curtly. "I just wanted to help Mia." "I'm used to it," Evan replied softly. She shot him a cold look. "Good. Then she won't need to hire a maid later." The air froze. Mia looked panicked, about to speak, but Evan gently touched her hand. "It's all right." His eyes were calm, but deep within them burned the quiet ache of wounded pride. That night, as Mia walked him to the gate, she whispered, "I'm sorry. My mom can be harsh, but she means well." Evan smiled faintly, his gaze kind but sorrowful. "I understand. Every mother worries for her daughter. I just wonder, if one day you find out I'm not who you think I am, would you still care for me?" Mia laughed softly, her voice tender and sincere. "You're being silly. I love you for who you are, not for what you have." Evan nodded, eyes drifting to the night sky. "I hope so." On the drive home, his reflection in the rearview mirror looked back at him, not as a wealthy CEO, but as a man searching for something real in a world built on facades. The narration slowed. "They say that when love is true, status doesn't matter, but life always finds a way to test that belief." Evan didn't know that within days, his secret would be exposed, not by him, but by the very person who had looked down on him most. A month after that dinner, everything seemed peaceful. Mia still smiled brightly every day. Evan still arrived at work in his old car, wearing his plain shirt. But behind those calm smiles, he knew time was ticking. No one can hide a name that carries too much weight, especially when the company was about to celebrate Innovex's 10th anniversary, and the founder and chairman himself would appear before all employees. That morning, Evan received a text from Mia. "I got chosen as one of the receptionists for the big company event. I'm so nervous but excited." He read the message, a small smile tugging at his lips, but his eyes reflected quiet fear. "Maybe it's time," he whispered. That evening, the Grand Marina Hotel gleamed with lights. Hundreds of Innovex employees filled the hall, dressed sharply, the air buzzing with celebration. Mia stood by the entrance, greeting guests with her usual warm smile, completely unaware that the man she loved was about to walk in, not as Evan Cole, but as Evan Lewis. The microphone crackled, then a voice announced, "Please welcome the founder and chairman of Innovex, Mr. Evan Lewis." The room erupted in applause. Mia froze. Her heart stopped. She looked up at the stage, and the world fell silent. Evan, the humble man she'd shared lunches and laughter with, now stood under the bright lights, dressed in an elegant black suit, every eye in the room fixed on him. The hall rose to their feet in admiration. Mia stepped back, stunned. "Evan Lewis," she whispered in disbelief. Standing nearby was her mother, invited by David, the man who had once courted Mia and secretly despised Evan. Her mother's face drained of color as she stared at the stage. Every cruel word she had said over that dinner echoed in her mind. Just enough to get by. He's not good enough. My daughter deserves better. And now the man she had looked down on was being applauded by hundreds. When the ceremony ended, Evan stepped down from the stage. His eyes met Mia's. She stood frozen, eyes red, hands trembling. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice shaking. Because I needed to know, he replied quietly. If I had nothing, no money, no title, would you still choose me? You think I loved you for your money? She cried. No, he said softly. I just wanted to believe in love. But part of me was scared. Scared that once you knew who I was, your eyes would change. The air was thick with silence. Then her mother approached, voice trembling. I didn't know. If I had known you were... Evan cut her off, calm but firm. If you had known, you wouldn't have looked down on me. But that's exactly what I needed to see. He turned to Mia, his voice gentler now. I'm not angry with you. You never asked what I had. You just cared. But I can't live behind a mask anymore. Love shouldn't require pretending. Mia wiped her tears, her voice trembling but honest. I don't need you to be a chairman. I just want you to be the man who once washed dishes with me. Evan smiled, a smile filled with both pain and warmth. Then I'll be that man again, if you'll still have me. A week later, Evan returned to Mia's house. Her mother opened the door, eyes hesitant but softer this time. She handed him a bouquet of sunflowers, Mia's favorite. Mr. Evan, I was wrong, she said quietly. I only wanted to protect my daughter from hardship, but I forgot that kindness and integrity are wealth too. Evan nodded gently. You weren't wrong. Sometimes good intentions are just hidden behind fear. That afternoon, he and Mia sat together on the porch, watching bougainvillea petals drift in the wind. No words, just soft laughter carried in the golden light. I'm still scared, you know, Mia murmured, that we come from two different worlds. No, Evan replied softly. We come from the same place, the place where lonely hearts learn to trust love again. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. The sunset bathed them both in warmth, quiet, golden, and real. Some people are rich because of money, but others become truly wealthy when they find a love that no amount of money can buy. Evan found that love, not in boardrooms or mansions, but in a small house, beside a woman whose smile was honest and whose heart was enough. A year after that fateful night, Evan and Mia's lives had completely changed. They married quietly in the little garden behind their home, where the golden sunlight fell over blooming sunflowers, her favorite flower. No glittering wedding gown, no lavish celebration, just two souls, once broken, now holding hands, smiling through the light. Mia's mother sat in the front row, silently wiping her tears. She was no longer the sharp, prideful woman she once was. Now she was simply a mother learning how to love her daughter the right way. When the ceremony ended, she approached Evan and whispered, "Thank you for not resenting me." Evan smiled, taking her hand gently. "I used to think you hated me, but now I understand. You were just afraid your daughter might suffer. And what mother isn't afraid of that?" After the wedding, Evan invited Mia's mother to live with them. Not in a grand mansion, but in a small suburban home with bougainvillea vines and an old kitchen she once loved. He said softly, "We don't need a palace, just a place where we can share dinner and laughter." She looked at him, her eyes warm. "You're the kind of man every mother hopes her daughter will find." Life flowed peacefully. In the mornings, Evan drove Mia to work. In the evenings, he cooked dinner, sometimes a simple soup her mother had taught him to make. Their home was always filled with laughter, not the laughter of the rich, but of people who had lost everything and learned how to love again. One night, Mia asked, "Do you ever regret pretending to be poor?" Evan thought for a moment, then smiled. "No, because if I hadn't pretended to be poor, I would never have realized how poor I used to be, in my soul." One golden afternoon, the three of them sat on the porch, the sunlight spilling across an old woven mat. Her mother looked at Evan and said softly, "You know, I used to look down on you because I thought money was the only thing that could protect my daughter. But now I understand, not everyone with money has a good heart, and not everyone without it is small." Evan smiled, replying gently, "Money can make a person bigger, but only kindness makes them grow." Years later, when Evan returned to his role as chairman, he never forgot where he came from. He often visited the old factory where he once worked as engineer Evan Cole. He still shared lunch with the workers, drank cheap coffee, and sometimes told them his story. "I once pretended to be poor to test a woman's love," he said with a quiet smile. "But she's the one who made me rich. In a way, money never could." Some laughed. Others fell silent, because they understood the greatest success is to remain humble enough to thank life itself. One morning, Evan held his little daughter's hand as he walked her to school. Mia stood by the doorway, waving. Her mother sat on a wooden chair, knitting, her eyes calm and full of peace. Before getting into the car, Evan turned back to look at them. The two women who had changed his life. One he loved and one who had once wounded him. He smiled. "Those two women," he thought, "are the reason I finally know what true happiness means."